The shovel bit into the earth with a sound that made Owen Quentin's hand drift toward his revolver, and when he eased his horse closer through the ponderosa pines, he saw her a woman in a dusty riding skirt burying something wrapped in oilcloth while the last light of day painted the New Mexico woods gold and crimson. It was late September, in the year 1876, and Owen had been tracking what he thought were cattle rustlers through the mountains east of Santa Fe when he stumbled upon this scene instead. The woman's back was to him, her dark hair coming loose from its pins as she worked frantically, and something about the desperation in her movements made him clear his throat rather than startle her completely. She whirled around, mud on her hands and fear stark in her eyes. They were green, he noticed, even in the fading light, green like new spring grass and currently wide with panic. She had a face that was more striking than pretty, all sharp cheekbones and full lips, and she could not have been more than 22 or 23 years old. "Easy," Owen said, keeping both hands visible on his saddle horn. "Did not mean to frighten you, miss." "Then you should not sneak up on people." Her voice was breathless, accent cultured in a way that did not match her current state of disarray. Eastern, maybe, Boston or Philadelphia. She made no move to cover what she had been burying, as if knowing it was too late for that. Owen was 30 years old, had spent the last decade working as a ranch hand and occasional deputy when the law needed extra guns, and he knew trouble when he saw it. This woman was trouble in the way a storm building on the horizon was trouble inevitable and possibly devastating. "Nobody sneaks on a horse this loud," he said mildly. "You burying something you should not be burying?" The woman's jaw tightened. She had dirt on her cheek, and her dress, once fine, he could tell was torn at the hem. "It is mine to bury." "Silver?" he guessed, because he had seen the glint of it before she had wrapped the cloth. She did not answer directly. Instead, she picked up the shovel again and returned to her work, throwing dirt over the oilcloth package with renewed urgency. "In case I need to run again." Those words hung in the air between them like smoke. Owen dismounted slowly, ground tying his bay gelding. "Run from what?" "From whom?" she corrected, still digging. "And that is none of your concern, cowboy." He should have ridden away, should have minded his own business and continued tracking the actual criminals he had been hired to find. But something in her voice, a tremor beneath the bravado, kept his boots planted in the pine needles. "Name is Owen Quentin," he said, "and if someone is after you, these woods are not safe. There's bandits working this territory." "Then perhaps you should go catch them and leave me to my work." She patted the dirt down firmly, then used a fallen branch to scatter pine needles over the disturbed earth. When she was satisfied, she pulled a small leather journal from her pocket and sketched something quickly, a map, he realized, marking the location. "What's your name?" Owen asked. She hesitated, and he could see her weighing whether to lie. "Rose Dalton." "Well, Miss Dalton, it is getting dark, and unless you have a camp nearby, you're going to be spending a cold night in these mountains. I will manage." But her eyes darted to the darkening woods, and he could see she was afraid. Owen made a decision that he suspected he might regret. "My camp is about a mile south. Got coffee and beans. You are welcome to share them, and I will ride out at first light." "Why would you help me?" It was a fair question. Owen thought about it as he gathered his horse's reins. "Because you look like you need help, and my mother raised me better than to leave a lady alone in the woods after dark." Rose Dalton studied him for a long moment, taking in his worn leather vest, the well-maintained colt at his hip, the honest weariness in his face. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied something, because she nodded once sharply. "I accept your offer, Mr. Quentin. But I warn you, if you have ill intentions, I have a derringer in my pocket and I know how to use it." "Noted," Owen said, with the barest hint of a smile. "But you will not need it." They walked through the woods in silence, Rose keeping pace beside his horse despite what had to be exhaustion. Owen found himself watching her from the corner of his eye, noting the way she moved alert, ready to bolt at any sign of danger. This was a woman who had learned to be cautious the hard way. His camp was modest: a bedroll, a small fire ring, supplies for a few days in the wilderness. Owen got the fire going while Rose stood at the edge of the clearing, still poised to run. Only when he had coffee brewing and beans heating in a small pot did she finally sit down, though she chose a spot where she could see all approaches. "How long have you been running?" Owen asked, handing her a tin cup of coffee. Rose wrapped her hands around the cup, breathing in the steam. 6 months, maybe 7. I have lost track. That is a long time to be looking over your shoulder. You have no idea. She took a sip, closed her eyes briefly. This is good. Thank you. They ate in companionable silence, and Owen did not push for more information. He had learned that people talked when they were ready, and pushing usually just made them clam up tighter. Instead, he told her about the ranch he worked on, about the herd of cattle that needed moving down from summer pasture before the first snow, about the simple rhythms of a life spent under open sky. "It sounds peaceful," Rose said softly. "It can be. Hard work, but honest." "I used to know what honest work felt like." Her voice had gone distant. "I was a bookkeeper in Philadelphia, kept accounts for a shipping company owned by a man named Charles Hendrickson." Owen waited, sensing there was more. He was 45, wealthy, respected. "I was 21 and naive." Rose stared into the fire. "He said he loved me, said he would marry me. I believed him, even when he asked me to adjust certain numbers in the ledgers. Small things at first. Just moving money between accounts, he said. All legal, he promised. But it was not legal. No. He was embezzling from his own company, from his business partners, from everyone. And when the auditors came, every fraudulent entry had my initials next to it. Every forged document had my handwriting." Her hands tightened around the cup. "Charles disappeared 2 days before the law came for me. I later learned he had a wife and 3 children in New York. I had been a convenience, and then a scapegoat." Owen felt anger kindle in his chest, the kind that came from seeing injustice done to someone who did not deserve it. "How did you get away?" "My landlady, bless her, saw them coming. She helped me climb out a back window while they knocked on the front door. I had been saving money, not much, but enough. I bought passage west under a false name, kept moving, changed my appearance." Rose touched her dark hair absently. "This used to be blonde. Henna changes many things." "The silver you buried?" "Everything I have left in the world. I've been doing sewing work, taking odd jobs under different names, slowly building up enough to start over somewhere far away. Maybe California, maybe Mexico, somewhere Charles's lies cannot reach." She looked at him directly, her green eyes reflecting firelight. "So now you know. I am a fugitive, Mr. Quentin. Still want to share your camp with me?" Owen considered his words carefully. "You did not commit the crimes you are accused of." "The law does not care about that. The evidence says otherwise." "Then the evidence is lying." He poured himself more coffee. "And for what it is worth, I believe you." Rose's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through her careful walls. "Why?" "Because I have known liars and thieves, Miss Dalton, and you do not have the look of either. You have the look of someone who got dealt a bad hand and is playing it the best way you know how." She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for that." They talked late into the night, the conversation shifting to easier topics. Owen told her about growing up in Texas, about losing his parents to fever when he was 17, about drifting west and finding work where he could. Rose spoke carefully of her childhood in Pennsylvania, of a father who taught her numbers, and a mother who died when she was young. There was a loneliness in both their stories that recognized itself in the other. When Rose finally dozed off, wrapped in Owen's spare blanket despite her protests, he sat watch by the fire. He told himself it was because of the bandits he had been tracking, But truthfully, it was because he wanted to make sure nobody came for her in the night. This woman who buried silver in the woods as insurance against the next time she had to run. This woman who had been betrayed and framed and was still fighting to survive. Dawn came cold and clear, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold. Rose woke to find Owen already up, making more coffee and frying salt pork in a skillet. "You should have woken me," she said, sitting up and trying to tame her hair back into some semblance of order. "You needed the rest." He handed her a plate of food. "Besides, I am an early riser by nature." They ate breakfast, and Owen could feel the weight of the coming goodbye settling between them. Rose would go her way, he would go his, and that would be that. It was the sensible thing, the smart thing. "Where are you headed?" Rose asked, echoing his thoughts. "Was tracking rustlers, but I lost their trail yesterday. Probably should head back to the ranch, let them know what I found, which is nothing useful." "And I should keep moving." Rose stood, brushing off her skirt. "Thank you, Mr. Quentin, for the food and the fire and the kindness. I will not forget it." Owen stood as well, and found himself not wanting her to go. It was foolish. He barely knew this woman, but something in him recognized something in her. And the thought of her traveling alone, constantly afraid, constantly running it, sat wrong in his chest. "Come with me," he said before he could think better of it. Rose blinked. "What?" "To the ranch. It is called the Double J, owned by a man named Jack Morrison. Good man, fair man. His wife Elena is always looking for help with the house, the cooking, the books. You said you were a bookkeeper. They could use someone with your skills, and it would be work under a roof with regular meals. I cannot. You can use a different name if you want. Say you are a widow from back east looking for a fresh start. Plenty of those out here. Nobody asked too many questions." Rose shook her head, but he could see the longing in her eyes. "It is too dangerous. If someone recognizes me, if word spreads, 'This is New Mexico territory, Miss Dalton. We are a long way from Philadelphia, and people out here care more about whether you can do a day's work than about what you might have done back east.'" Owen took a step closer. "You said you wanted to start over. This is a chance to do that. A real chance. Not just running from place to place until the money runs out. Why do you care?" The question was almost a whisper. Owen thought about how to answer that. How to explain that in one evening by a campfire he had learned more about loneliness and courage and quiet desperation than he had in years of drifting. How her strength in the face of impossible circumstances had touched something in him he thought had gone dormant. "Because everyone deserves a chance," he said finally. "And because I think you are brave and resourceful and exactly the kind of person who could build a good life out here if given half an opportunity." Rose studied his face, searching for deception or ulterior motives. Owen let her look, having nothing to hide. Finally, she took a shaky breath. "If I do this, if I come with you, it has to be clear that I am accepting a job offer, nothing more. I cannot, I will not." "I am not Charles Hendrickson," Owen said firmly. "I am offering you work and safety, Miss Dalton. Nothing more, nothing less. What you do with that opportunity is entirely up to you." The relief in her expression told him that was the right answer. "Then yes, I will come with you, at least for a while until I can earn enough to truly move on." They broke camp quickly, and Owen insisted Rose ride his horse while he walked. She protested, but he pointed out that she was exhausted and his gelding could use a lighter load after days in the mountains. It was a thin excuse, but she accepted it. The ride back to the Double J Ranch took 2 days. They traveled slowly, Owen showing Rose the landscape and telling her what she needed to know. The ranch was about 15 miles south of Santa Fe in good grazing country with access to a year-round creek. Jack Morrison ran about 300 head of cattle and a string of horses he was starting to breed for the cavalry. His wife Elena was originally from Santa Fe, and they had been married 15 years with no children of their own, but half a dozen ranch hands they treated like family. "Elena is kind," Owen said, as they made camp the second night, "but she is sharp as a tack. She will know you are running from something." "Will she say anything?" "Not if you do your job and treat people fairly, but she will notice." Owen poked at the fire with a stick. That being said, Elena herself came from complicated circumstances. Her father did not approve of Jack, wanted her to marry a wealthy landowner from Mexico City. She chose Jack anyway, and her family disowned her, so she understands about starting over. Rose nodded slowly. And the other ranch hands? Good men, mostly. Few of them are probably running from something too, though nobody talks about it. There is Tom, who is about 50, and the best hand with horses you will ever meet. Miguel and his brother Carlos, who have been with Jack since the beginning. Young kid named Billy, who thinks he is tougher than he is. And then there's me. What are you running from, Owen Quentin? Rose asked softly. He smiled, but it did not quite reach his eyes. Nothing so dramatic as a false accusation. Just ghosts and memories, and the sense that I was supposed to do something more with my life than what I have done. Still looking for what that something is. Perhaps we are both looking for the same thing, a place to stop running. Perhaps we are. They reached the Double J late the next afternoon. The ranch house was sprawling and built of adobe, with a large barn and several outbuildings scattered around a central yard. Chickens scratched in the dirt, and a dog came running up to greet them, tail wagging furiously. "That is Scout," Owen said, scratching the dog's ears. "Thinks he runs the place." Elena Morrison came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She was a handsome woman in her mid-30s, with dark hair threaded with silver and eyes that missed nothing. "Owen, we did not expect you back so soon. Any luck with the rustlers?" "No, madam, lost their trail in the mountains." Owen helped Rose down from the horse. "But I did find someone who might be able to help around the house. This is Rose Davis, widow from back east. She has bookkeeping skills and is looking for work." Rose caught the name Change Davis instead of Dalton and shot Owen a grateful look. Elena's sharp eyes moved from Owen to Rose and back again, and Owen could practically see her taking in every detail. Rose's exhausted state, her fine but worn clothing, the way she held herself like someone ready to bolt. "Widow?" Elena said neutrally. "My condolences, Mrs. Davis. How long has it been?" "Nearly a year," Rose said, the lie coming smoothly. "My husband was a shopkeeper. Pneumonia took him last winter. I decided I needed a change of scenery." "And you came all the way to New Mexico territory?" There was no accusation in Elena's voice, just curiosity. "I always wanted to see the West," Rose said, "and there was nothing left for me in Pennsylvania." Elena nodded slowly, and something in her expression softened. "Well, I certainly could use the help, especially with the books. Jack's handwriting is atrocious, and I can barely keep track of what we spend versus what we earn. Can you start tomorrow?" "I can start today if you need me to." "Tomorrow is soon enough." Elena smiled properly then, warm and welcoming. "Come inside and I will show you where you will be staying. We have a small room off the kitchen that should suit you. Owen, go tell Jack we have a new hire." Owen tipped his hat to both women and led his horse toward the barn, feeling oddly lighter than he had in months. He found Jack Morrison checking over a mare's injured hoof, his broad frame bent over the horse's leg, with the gentleness that came from years of working with animals. "Boss," Owen said by way of greeting. Jack straightened, grinning. "Owen, thought you would be gone at least a week. Those rustlers slip away?" "Never found them, but I found something else." Owen proceeded to tell Jack the broad strokes of Rose's story, not the full truth, but enough that Jack would understand the situation. To his credit, Jack did not ask too many questions. "Woman on her own needs help. We help," Jack said simply. "That is how things work out here. Elena will be glad for the company too. Gets lonely for her sometimes, surrounded by men who talk about nothing but cattle and horses. Appreciate it, Jack." "You gonna tell me what else is going on?" Jack asked shrewdly. "Because you have a look about you I have not seen before." Owen busied himself with untacking his horse. "Don't know what you mean." "Sure you do not. Just remember, Owen, that girl is in a vulnerable position. You do right by her, understand?" "I intend to do nothing but right by her," Owen said firmly. "I gave her my word." Jack clapped him on the shoulder. Good man, now get yourself cleaned up. Elena will have supper ready soon, and you smell like you have been sleeping with your horse. Over the following weeks, Rose settled into life at the Double J with a determination that impressed everyone. She proved to be an excellent bookkeeper, organizing the ranch's chaotic records with an efficiency that made Elena laugh with relief. But more than that, she threw herself into every aspect of ranch life, learning to cook New Mexican dishes from Elena, helping mend clothes, even assisting with the chickens in the vegetable garden. Owen watched her slowly relax, like a wild animal learning that this particular patch of ground was safe. The shadows under her eyes faded. She smiled more. And when she laughed, which happened more frequently as October turned to November, it was like sunlight breaking through clouds. He tried to keep his distance, tried to honor his promise that he was only offering her work and safety. But it was hard when she was everywhere helping Elena prepare meals in the kitchen, sitting on the porch in the evenings mending shirts, riding out to bring lunch to the hands working distant fences. Hard when every conversation with her revealed another layer of sharp intelligence and dry humor. Hard when he found himself looking for excuses to be wherever she was. One evening in mid-November, Owen was working on repairing a saddle in the barn when Rose appeared in the doorway. She had a shawl wrapped around her shoulders against the chill, and her dark hair was loose around her face. "Elena sent me to tell you supper is ready," she said. "I will be there in a minute, just want to finish this stitching." Rose came closer, watching his hands work. "You are good at that." "Had a lot of practice. Out on the range, you learned to fix your own gear or do without?" "Owen," she said, and something in her tone made him look up. "I wanted to thank you for bringing me here, for giving me this chance. I know I have said it before, but I mean it. You quite possibly saved my life." "You would have figured something out. You are resourceful." "Maybe. But I was so tired of running, of looking over my shoulder, of never staying anywhere long enough to feel human again." She smiled, and it transformed her whole face. "Here, I feel human again. I feel like maybe I could build something real." Owen set down the saddle, giving her his full attention. "I am glad. You deserve that." "Do I?" The question was soft, vulnerable. "Sometimes I wonder if I made some terrible mistake. If there was something I could have done differently." "Stop." Owen stood, and without thinking he took her hand. It was cold from the evening air, and small in his calloused palm. "You did nothing wrong, Rose. That man betrayed you, used you, and threw you away to save himself. None of that was your fault. I was so stupid to trust him. You were human. People are supposed to be able to trust people. The fact that he abused that trust makes him a villain, not you a fool." Rose's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Say exactly what I need to hear. Make me feel like maybe I am not broken beyond repair." Owen's heart was pounding. She was so close, looking up at him with those green eyes, and it would be so easy to lean down, to kiss her, to tell her that she was not broken at all, but rather the strongest, bravest, most remarkable woman he had ever met. But he had given his word. "You are not broken," he said instead, squeezing her hand once before releasing it. "You are surviving. There is a difference." Rose nodded, dashing at her eyes with the back of her hand. "We should go eat before Elena sends a search party." They walked to the house together, and Owen tried not to think about how much he wanted things he had promised not to want. December brought cold winds and the threat of snow. The ranch prepared for winter, moving cattle to lower pastures, repairing buildings, stocking up on supplies. Owen found himself working long hours, falling into bed exhausted every night, which was good because it meant less time to think about Rose and the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, or the sound of her laugh, or the increasingly frequent moments when he caught her watching him with an expression he did not dare interpret. The week before Christmas, Elena announced they would be hosting a small celebration, just the ranch hands and a few neighbors from nearby spreads. "We need some joy around here," she declared, "and Rose has been working so hard she deserves a party." The day of the celebration, the house smelled of roasting meat and fresh baked bread. Elena had outdone herself, and Rose had helped with everything, her face flushed from the kitchen heat, and her eyes bright with excitement. "I have not been to a party in so long," she confided to Owen as she helped set up tables in the main room. "I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to have something to celebrate." "What are we celebrating?" Owen asked, moving a bench into position. "Being alive, being here, having people who care about us." Rose smiled at him. Small miracles. The party was loud and cheerful. Full of music, Tom played fiddle, and one of the neighbors had brought a guitar, and dancing and laughter. Owen watched Rose spin in a dance with Jack, then Miguel, then old Tom, her face alight with happiness. She looked beautiful and young, and free in a way he had not seen before. When the music slowed to something gentler, Owen found himself standing in front of her, hand extended. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Davis?" "You may, Mr. Quentin." She fit perfectly in his arms, her hand light on his shoulder, his palm resting at her waist. They swayed to the music, not really following any particular steps, just moving together. "This is nice," Rose said softly. "It is. Owen, I need to tell you something." His heart stuttered. "All right. I'm not going to leave. I was planning to come spring. Save up enough money and move on, just like I told you, but I do not want to anymore." She looked up at him. "I want to stay here. Build a real life. Stop running." "That's good," Owen managed. "That is really good, Rose. But I need you to understand something else." She took a breath. "I care about you. More than I should. More than is probably wise given everything, and if you do not feel the same way, that is fine. I will never mention it again, and we can just be friends, but I needed you to know." Owen stopped dancing. Around them, other couples continued to move, but he was frozen, looking down at this remarkable woman who had just handed him her heart despite every reason she had to keep it locked away. "Rose, you do not have to say anything," she said quickly. "I know you said you were just offering me work and safety. I know you were being honorable. But I had to tell you because keeping it inside was eating me alive," and Owen kissed her. It was not planned, not thought out. He just leaned down and pressed his lips to hers, cutting off her nervous rambling with the most honest answer he could give. She made a small sound of surprise, then melted into him, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck. When they finally broke apart, Owen was dimly aware that the music had stopped and everyone was staring at them. He did not care. "I've been half in love with you since that night by the campfire," he said, loud enough that half the room could hear. "And I have been trying so hard to keep my distance because I did not want you to think I had rescued you with expectations. But if you are telling me you feel the same way, then Rose Dalton Davis, or whatever name you want to go by, I would very much like to court you properly." Rose was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes, I would like that very much." Someone whooped. It sounded like young Billy. And then the room erupted in applause and laughter. Elena was beaming. And Jack had his arm around her waist, both of them looking pleased with themselves, as if they had planned this all along. The rest of the evening passed in a happy blur. Owen barely left Rose's side, and when the guests finally departed and the household settled down for the night, he walked her to her small room off the kitchen. "So we are doing this?" Rose asked, still sounding slightly disbelieving. "If you want to." "I want to. But Owen, you need to know I am still technically a fugitive. If anyone ever connects Rose Davis to Rose Dalton, if the law comes looking, then we will deal with it together," Owen said firmly. "You are not alone anymore, Rose. You do not have to carry this by yourself." "I am not used to having someone to rely on." "Get used to it." He brushed a strand of hair back from her face, marveling that he was allowed to do this now. "I am not going anywhere. Promise? Promise." She stood on her toes and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of hope. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "Good night, Owen Quentin." "Good night, Rose." The winter passed in a haze of happiness that Owen had never experienced before. He and Rose courted with Elena as a smiling chaperone, taking walks together when weather permitted, sitting together at meals, stealing kisses in the barn when they thought no one was looking. They talked endlessly about everything and nothing, their pasts, their hopes, the life they might build together. "I want a house," Rose said one clear January day as they rode fence line together. "Nothing fancy, but something that is ours, with windows that let in light and a kitchen with a real stove." "We could build that," Owen said. "Jack has been talking about expanding, building another house for one of the senior hands. Could be us if we wanted." "You would stay here at the Double J?" "Why not? It is good work, good people. Unless you want to go somewhere else?" Rose shook her head. "No, this feels like home. I never thought anywhere would feel like home again, but this does." By March, Owen had saved enough money and talked to Jack enough times that they began working on the house, a modest structure about a quarter-mile from the main ranch buildings, situated near a pretty grove of cottonwoods. Owen did most of the work himself, with help from the other hands on weekends, and Rose spent her free time planning the interior, sketching layouts, talking excitedly about where furniture would go and what colors to paint the walls. "You have not actually agreed to marry me yet," Owen pointed out one evening as they sat on the partially completed porch watching the sunset. Rose looked at him sideways. "You have not actually asked?" "I am building you a house. I thought that was implied." "Owen Quentin, if you think you are getting out of a proper proposal, you are very much mistaken." He laughed, then sobered. "I was waiting for the right moment." "When is the right moment?" "I do not know. I've never done this before." He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I wanted it to be perfect. Wanted to have the right words." "The right words are the ones that are true," Rose said softly. Owen turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. The setting sun painted her in shades of gold and rose, and he thought he had never seen anything more beautiful in his life. "Rose Davis, I love you. I love your strength and your courage and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love how you turned a disaster into a new beginning and how you face each day with determination even when you are scared. I love that you are smart and funny and kind and that you make me want to be a better man." He took a breath. "I do not have much to offer you. A half-finished house, a job on someone else's ranch, and a heart that is completely yours. But if you will have me, I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life trying to make you happy. Will you marry me?" Rose was crying, tears streaming down her face even as she smiled. "Yes, yes, of course I will marry you." Owen pulled her into his arms, holding her close as relief and joy flooded through him. "I will get you a ring. I have been saving for one, just need a few more weeks." "I do not need a ring," Rose said against his chest. "I just need you." "You are getting a ring anyway, and a wedding, whatever kind you want." She pulled back to look at him. "Small, just us and Jack and Elena. I cannot risk a big celebration, cannot risk word spreading too far. Is that all right?" "That is more than all right." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "I would marry you tomorrow at dawn with no one but the chickens as witnesses if that was what you wanted." "Let us wait until the house is finished," Rose said, laughing. "I want our wedding night to be in our own home." They were married on a beautiful May morning in 1877 in the parlor of the main ranch house with Jack and Elena as witnesses. Elena had made Rose a dress of soft blue cotton, and Owen wore his best shirt and the new vest Elena had secretly been sewing for him. Rose had flowers in her hair, dessert marigolds that Owen had picked that morning, and when they said their vows, her voice was steady and sure. "I, Rose, take you, Owen, to be my husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death parts us. This is my solemn vow." Owen's voice caught when it was his turn, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they were promising each other. "I, Owen, take you, Rose, to be my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death parts us. This is my solemn vow." The circuit preacher Jack had found an old friend who asked no questions, pronounced them man and wife, and when Owen kissed his bride, he felt like his life was finally beginning in the way it was always meant to. They moved into their house that afternoon. It was small and simple, but it was theirs, the first thing Owen had ever owned that truly mattered. The first place Rose had felt safe enough to call home in over a year. They spent their wedding night wrapped in each other's arms, talking and laughing and making love with a tenderness that came from trust and patience and genuine affection. "Are you happy?" Owen asked as Rose lay curled against his chest, the moonlight streaming through the window painting silver streaks across their bedroom. "Happier than I ever thought I could be again," Rose said. "Happier than I probably deserve to be." "You deserve everything good in this world. I have you. That is more than enough." The months that followed were perhaps the best of Owen's life. He and Rose fell into an easy rhythm, working together to make their house a home. Rose continued her bookkeeping work for Jack and Elena while also managing their small household. Owen worked the ranch, coming home each evening to a warm house and a wife who greeted him with genuine joy. They were building something real together, not just a life, but a partnership based on mutual respect and love. In late August, Rose started feeling ill in the mornings. Elena figured it out before Rose did, taking one look at her goddaughter, for that was what she'd become, and smiling knowingly. "You are with child," Elena announced. Rose stared at her. "I cannot be." "We have only been married 3 months." "That is plenty of time. Trust me, I recognize the signs. You need to tell Owen." Rose told him that evening, nervous and excited and slightly terrified all at once. Owen's reaction was everything she could have hoped for: shock, then joy, then a fierce protectiveness that made her heart swell. "A baby," he kept saying as if trying to make it real. "We are having a baby." "Are you happy?" Rose asked. "Happy? Rose, I am terrified and thrilled and so full of love I think I might burst." He pulled her into his arms carefully, as if she were made of glass. "You are going to be a mother. I am going to be a father. We are going to be a family." "We already are a family." "A bigger family, then." But beneath the joy, Rose carried a fear she could not quite shake. One evening in early September, she and Owen were sitting on their porch when she finally voiced it. "What if someone finds me?" she asked quietly. "What if the law catches up to me and they take me back to Philadelphia? What happens to our baby then?" Owen had been thinking about this too, though he had not wanted to worry her. "It has been over a year since you left, and you have done nothing wrong since then. Even if someone did find you, even if they tried to extradite you, they would put me in prison, Owen. Pregnant or not, they would lock me up. Then we make sure that does not happen." He took her hand. "Tomorrow I'm going to ride into Santa Fe and talk to a lawyer Jack knows. His name is Samuel Thornton, and Jack says he is sharp and discreet. Maybe there is something we can do, some legal avenue we have not considered. That costs money we do not have. We have some saved, and this is important. This is our family." The next day, Owen rode into Santa Fe and spent 2 hours with Samuel Thornton, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who listened to Rose's story without judgment. "The problem," Thornton said, "is that she fled before trial. That makes it harder to argue innocence. However, the evidence against her is entirely circumstantial and based on the testimony of a man who himself disappeared under suspicious circumstances. If she were to voluntarily return and face trial with proper representation, there is a chance, not a guarantee, but a chance that the truth could come out." "She cannot go back," Owen said firmly. "She is pregnant. The stress alone could harm her or the baby, and if they convicted her, then the alternative is to stay hidden and hope no one ever finds her, which is not really a life, Mr. Quentin." Owen rode home with Thornton's words weighing on him. When he explained the situation to Rose, her face went pale. "I cannot go back," she said. I cannot face Charles again, cannot sit in a courtroom while he lies about me. I cannot. I know, and I'm not asking you to, but Rose, we need to think long term. What happens in 5 years, 10? Do we spend our whole lives waiting for the other shoe to drop? I do not know, Rose said helplessly. I do not have answers, Owen. I just know I cannot go back there. They let the matter drop, but it hung between them, a shadow over their otherwise happy preparations for their baby. Rose sewed tiny clothes while Elena knitted blankets. Owen built a cradle from cottonwood, sanding it smooth and carving small flowers into the headboard. They transformed a corner of their bedroom into a nursery area and tried not to think about the fear that lurked beneath their joy. In October, a U.S. Marshal named Frank Cooper rode onto the Double J Ranch asking questions about a woman matching Rose's description. Jack, bless him, played dumb and sent the marshal on his way with directions to several neighboring ranches. But when he rode to Owen's house that evening to warn them, his face was grim. "He will be back," Jack said, "and when he is, he will look more carefully. Rose needs to decide what she wants to do." Rose, 6 months pregnant and showing despite her loose dresses, sat down heavily on their porch step. "How did they find me?" "Does not matter how," Owen said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. "What matters is what we do now." "I could run again, go to Mexico maybe. They could not extradite me from there." "You are 6 months pregnant," Elena said sharply. She had come with Jack, and her eyes were fierce. "You are not riding to Mexico in your condition, and you are not going alone. I will not let Owen throw away his life to run with me, and I will not let our baby be born a fugitive." "Then we fight," Owen said. "We bring in Thornton. We get sworn statements from Elena and Jack about your character. We find a way to prove your innocence from here." "How?" "Charles has vanished. The evidence is all falsified. There is no way to prove I did not do what they say I did." "Actually," said a new voice, "there might be." They all turned to see Tom, the senior ranch hand, standing at the edge of the porch. He looked uncomfortable but determined. "I did not mean to eavesdrop," Tom said, "but I heard what you were saying about Philadelphia and a man named Charles Hendrickson." Rose went very still. "How do you know that name?" "Because I spent 20 years as a policeman in New York City before I came west. Retired 5 years ago after my wife died. Wanted a fresh start." Tom climbed onto the porch, moving like his joints ached. "Charles Hendrickson is known to law enforcement in New York. We could never prove anything, but we suspected he was running confidence schemes all over the eastern seaboard. If he framed you the way you say he did, you are not his first victim." Hope flared in Owen's chest. "Could you testify to that?" "I could write a statement, sure, but more than that, I know people back east. People who might be able to dig into Hendrickson's past, find other victims, prove a pattern of behavior." Tom looked at Rose. "It would take time and money, but if you are willing to fight, I am willing to help." Rose was crying silently, overwhelmed. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because I have seen you work yourself half to death to build an honest life. Because you are about to be a mother, and you deserve better than living in fear. And because I'm old and bored, and this sounds like the kind of case I got into police work to solve in the first place." Tom smiled slightly. "Also, Elena makes very good pie, and I suspect she will make extra if I help." "Tom," Elena said, her own eyes misty, "you can have all the pie you want." Over the following weeks, Tom worked his old contacts back east while Samuel Thornton prepared legal arguments. They learned that Charles Hendrickson had indeed vanished, but that there had been whispers about his business practices for years. More importantly, they found 3 other women who had been romantically involved with Charles and who had similarly been blamed for financial irregularities they claimed to know nothing about. None had been prosecuted because Charles had paid settlements, but they were willing to make statements now. Marshal Cooper returned in early November, but this time he was met by Samuel Thornton with a folder full of evidence suggesting Rose Dalton was the victim of a con man rather than a criminal herself. Thornton argued that prosecuting Rose would be a miscarriage of justice and a waste of resources better spent finding Hendrickson. "The Philadelphia prosecutors are not going to like this, Cooper said, reading through the statements. "Then let them come out here and make their case," Thornton replied. "But I promise you, if they try to take my client back east while she is 8 months pregnant, every newspaper from here to Washington will hear about how the law is persecuting an innocent victim rather than chasing the real criminal." Cooper was not a bad man, just someone doing his job. He read the evidence, looked at Rose's obvious pregnancy and the life she had built, and made a decision. "I will take this back to Philadelphia," he said. "Present it to the prosecutor, see what they say. But Mrs. Quentin, you need to stay here. If you run now, it will look like guilt." "I am not running anymore," Rose said quietly. This is my home." Cooper left, and they waited. Rose's pregnancy progressed, her belly growing round and her ankles swelling as winter approached. Owen fussed over her constantly, building up the fire, making sure she ate enough, rubbing her aching back in the evenings. She both loved and was exasperated by his attention. "I am pregnant, not dying," she said one evening as he insisted she put her feet up. "I know, but you are carrying my child and I love you, so you are putting your feet up." Their son was born on a cold December night, with Elena serving as midwife and Owen pacing a hole in the floor of their small house. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Owen was genuinely afraid he might lose Rose. But she was strong and stubborn, and when their baby finally entered the world with a lusty cry, she was exhausted but triumphant. "A boy," Elena said, placing the tiny squalling bundle in Rose's arms. "A beautiful, healthy boy." Owen knelt beside the bed, looking at his wife and son with wonder. The baby had dark hair and a red face, and tiny, perfect fingers that gripped Owen's thumb with surprising strength. "Hello," Owen whispered. "Hello, little one. Welcome to the world." "What should we name him?" Rose asked, her voice hoarse from hours of labor. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Owen looked at his son, at Rose, at the life they had built against all odds. "Oliver," he said. "Oliver Jack Quentin, after your father and the man who gave us a home." Rose smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oliver, I love it." They spent that first night as a family of 3, taking turns holding the baby, marveling at his tiny features, falling in love with him more with every breath. Owen had thought he understood happiness before, but this was something else entirely, a contentment so deep it felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. The letter from Philadelphia arrived 3 weeks after Oliver's birth. Rose's hands shook as she opened it, with Owen reading over her shoulder. The charges against Rose Dalton had been dropped. Further investigation had revealed that Charles Hendrickson had been running similar schemes in multiple cities, with a pattern of framing his accomplices when things went wrong. There was now a warrant out for Hendrickson's arrest on multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. The Philadelphia prosecutor's office apologized for any inconvenience and wished Mrs. Quentin well. Rose read the letter 3 times before she believed it was real. Then she burst into tears, clutching the paper to her chest while Oliver squalled in his cradle and Owen held her, his own eyes wet. "It is over," Rose kept saying. "It is really over. I am free." "You were always free," Owen said, "but now everyone else knows it too." They celebrated quietly that evening, just the 4 of them, Rose, Owen, Oliver, and the life they had fought so hard to build. Elena brought over a special dinner, and Tom came by to offer his gruff congratulations. Jack clapped Owen on the shoulder and told him he was proud, and Owen felt a surge of gratitude for all these people who had become his family. That night, after Oliver was asleep and they were lying in their bed, Rose turned to Owen in the darkness. "I never thought I could have this," she said softly. "A home, a family, a life where I did not have to be afraid. You have it now. We have it. Because of you. Because you found me in those woods and decided to help a stranger." Owen thought back to that day, to the woman burying silver and saying she might need to run again, how far they had come from that moment. "I am the lucky one," he said. "I found you, and you made my life mean something." We found each other, Rose corrected, and we built this together. The years that followed were full and rich. Oliver grew from a colicky infant into a curious toddler who got into everything. Owen and Rose added on to their house, building a proper bedroom for their son and expanding the kitchen. Rose took over all the bookkeeping for the Double J as well as for 2 neighboring ranches, her reputation for honesty and skill spreading through the territory. Owen was promoted to foreman, working alongside Jack to grow the ranch's reputation for quality horses. When Oliver was 3, Rose became pregnant again. This time there was no fear shadowing her joy, only anticipation. Their daughter was born on a sunny spring morning in 1881, a little girl with her mother's green eyes and her father's dark hair. "What about Olivia?" Rose suggested, holding the baby while Oliver stood on his toes trying to see his new sister. "Olivia May Quentin." "I love it," Owen said, kissing first his wife and then his daughter's downy head. "Olivia May it is." They were a family of 4 now, living in their little house near the cottonwoods, building a life one day at a time. Owen thought sometimes about that night in the woods, about how a chance encounter had changed the trajectory of both their lives. He thought about the silver Rose had buried. They had retrieved it months after the charges were dropped, using it to build the addition to the house, and how she had been preparing to run again because that was all she knew how to do. But she did not need to run anymore. None of them did. They had found their place, their people, their purpose, and if that was not the best definition of home, Owen did not know what was. The children grew, and the ranch prospered, and Owen and Rose grew older together in the way of people who had chosen each other deliberately and completely. There were hard times, of course, drought years and sick cattle, the constant worry that came with raising children, the aches and pains of aging bodies, but they faced it all together, and that made all the difference. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen took Rose back to the spot in the woods where he had found her. The ponderosa pines stood tall and unchanged, and the afternoon light still painted everything gold and crimson. "I was so scared that day," Rose said, looking around. "So tired and desperate and certain I would never have anything good again. And now? Now I have everything?" She turned to him. This woman who had become his partner in every sense of the word. "I have you and Oliver and Olivia. I have a home and a life and a future, all because one cowboy decided to offer a desperate woman some coffee and kindness." "Best decision I ever made," Owen said, pulling her close. "Mine too, trusting you, staying, choosing to stop running and start living." They stood there in the woods where their story had begun, holding each other as the sun set and the first stars appeared. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of the ranch cattle lowing, horses nickering, the faint voices of people going about the business of living. Their children were there with Elena, probably being spoiled with cookies and stories. Their house waited for them, warm and welcoming. Rose had buried silver in these woods once, insurance against the day she would need to run again, but she had never needed it. Instead, she had found something more valuable than any amount of precious metal: a home, a love, a life worth staying for. And Owen, who had spent a decade drifting and searching for purpose, had found it in the most unexpected way. Not in grand adventures or heroic deeds, but in the simple act of offering help to someone who needed it, in choosing to see past the surface to the truth beneath, in building a life with someone who matched him in courage and stubbornness and hope. They walked back to the ranch hand in hand as full darkness fell, following a path they knew by heart. Behind them, the woods stood silent and secretive, keeping their memories safe. Ahead, light spilled from windows and voices called out in welcome. Their children ran to meet them, full of questions about where they had been. Elena had saved them dinner. Jack wanted Owen's opinion on a new horse he was considering buying. It was ordinary and domestic and absolutely perfect. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Rose and Owen lay in their bed and talked about nothing in particular: plans for the next day, stories from their past, dreams for the future. It was what they did most nights. This comfortable intimacy that came from years of sharing a life. I love you, Rose said eventually, her head on his shoulder. I do not say it enough, but I love you more than I have words for. I love you too, Owen replied, kissing her forehead, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond. That is a long time. Not nearly long enough. Outside, the New Mexico night was vast and full of stars. Inside their little house by the cottonwoods, Owen and Rose Quentin slept peacefully, surrounded by the life they had built together. A life born from a chance meeting in the woods, and sustained by trust and determination, and a love that had proved stronger than fear. The silver rose had buried all those years ago had bought them a future, but it was the choice to stop running to stay and fight and build something real that had bought them a home. And in the end, that was all anyone could hope for, a place to belong, people to love, the courage to face tomorrow knowing you were not alone. They had found all of that and more, and they lived out their days in gratitude and joy, raising their children, growing old together, and never once regretting the moment a cowboy had stumbled upon a woman burying silver in the woods and decided to help. It was the beginning of everything that mattered, and they spent the rest of their lives being grateful for it. The end.